I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network.
So, Lewis Howes, you've been on the podcast before, and I'm holding your brand new book, which is excellent. I highly recommend. It's called The School of Greatness, a real-world guide to living bigger, loving deeper, and leaving a legacy. Did you come up with that subtitle?
I did.
Really?
I did, yes.
Like, I always hate subtitles, to be honest.
It took me like 3 months to figure it out. I was so...
3 months to figure out just a sentence.
Literally 3 months. I was going back and forth with the publisher. I was split testing with my audience. I posted on Facebook like 6 different options. I was like, what do you guys want? What do you guys like the best? And so many authors were telling me, don't go with this subtitle because it's too broad. It needs to be like how to make millions, how to do this, how to like more actionable. And but my audience, every time I posted something out there with different options, this was the winner every time.
What about just, and we're going to get into the actual School of Greatness and how you prescribe. So basically, before we get more into the subtitle, you basically interviewed a bunch of people who you felt had clearly achieved a level of excellence, and you wanted to learn what separated them out from the pack.
Yes.
And including yourself, because you've achieved Olympic level excellence in a variety of areas. And so you tell your story as well as the stories of everybody else. And from this book, The School of Greatness, we can kind of learn these habits of some amazing people. Like, who are some of the people you interviewed?
You know, I've had Angel Martinez, who is the CEO of Deckers. You might know that company. Deckers, $1.something billion company. So learning about how he started out here in New York City in poverty, couldn't even afford shoes when he was a kid, and really wanted Chuck Taylors, couldn't even afford them, to now he runs one of the biggest shoe companies in the world, to Olympic gold medalists like Shawn Johnson, talking about how the most pressure moment, with billions of people watching you at 16 years old, how can you perform at the highest level and win a gold medal at 16?
Can you imagine that?
I can't even imagine that at 32. Like, you know what I mean?
When I was 16, I think for something like that, you have to have a certain level of maturity as early as the age of 6 or 7 to be able to be the best in the world by age of 16.
Exactly.
I mean, when I was 16, I was basically the most immature teenager possible.
I was right there with you.
So, I mean, I was like, I would have like my paper route and I would dump the papers in the sewer. And, I was not ready for like Olympic gold medal material.
Exactly.
So
she's very mature for her age for sure. But I was not ready for a girlfriend at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And definitely. Look, no girl was ready for me at that time. So, but I want to kind of break it down how you break it down. You kind of go over every aspect of what are the ingredients of greatness. But I just want to ask you one more question about the subtitle.
Yes.
Did you consider just a real world guide to living bigger?
I didn't consider that.
Because I get
like
it from that.
You like it?
Yeah.
Just at that?
Not that I'm criticizing this.
Sure.
I never really noticed subtitles anywhere. I always push back. Like, I kind of like to just have the title.
Yeah.
Like, the School of Greatness sounds great. I know what it's about. I'm going to learn how to be great.
You know, from a lot of different angles, I approach this. The School of Greatness for me approaches more men. That title.
Okay.
Great. It approaches more men. A Real Guide to Living Bigger, Loving Deeper, Leaving Legacy is more tailored to women. I feel like women will connect with that message better. And the essence and the energy of the book can capture all people. So in some ways, it's like I might be doing a disservice because I'm not specifically talking to one person or one demographic. But that's not what the book's about.
Okay, so what I want to do is I basically want to go through the outline of the book.
Yes.
And you can describe what you learned from each person in that section or chapter or whatever.
Sure.
So the first thing you have is create a vision. Mm-hmm. And I find a lot of people have a hard time with what I'll call the vision thing. Like, most people don't really know how to find their vision, how to find their, people think that they should have one purpose in life. Like, I got an email today from a parent, and she's upset because her daughter is having a hard time. She's going from thing to thing to thing. And her daughter is only 16 or 17 years old. And I said, that's totally okay. Like, it's good to explore many things. But at what point do you kind of shift from searching to finding, and how do you find?
It's a great question, because when I was 16, all I wanted was to have a girlfriend and to make it and play and get a college scholarship. And then when I was in college, all I wanted to do was be a professional athlete. And then when I was injured and didn't know what I wanted to do, all I wanted to do was get off my sister's couch and be able to afford an apartment on my own. So I think I'm still evolving. Right now I have a vision that is to serve 100 million people, to show them how to make a full-time living doing what they love.
But let me ask you a question about that. So aside from the girlfriend thing, all your other things were about, again, you exploring different slices of this concept of greatness
around my passion, my dream.
Right. Yeah. Your passion, maybe it was concentrated for a while on like athletics, and we've discussed this in other podcasts, but you broadened it out. It reminds me of like how AJ Jacobs will take a concept like, let's say, the year of living biblically, and then he'll divide that up into like 20 concepts about living biblically. Right. And that's essentially what you did, in terms of your own life. Instead of you being a pro football player, you kind of look at all aspects of professionalism and excellence. Yes. And, you became an Olympic level athlete and so on. So how did the people in your book, how did they find their vision?
This is going to sound a little cheesy and lame probably, but they found it by dreaming. And I think this is something a lot of people don't do enough of. And maybe this will connect with the audience, maybe not, but when we were kids, we used to dream all the time. We used to think about all the things we wanted to do. We used to come up with games. We used to think about who we wanted to be when we grow up, and we stopped dreaming. And a lot of these people that I connect with, they have such powerful, vivid dreams. They visualize it. Did you see the movie recently, the Walk the Wire, or the Man on the Wire? Or whatever?
I haven't, but I've read his autobiography, Philip Petit's autobiography.
Yes.
He's the one who, just for the audience, he very sneakily attached a wire between the two World Trade Centers and then tight-roped
for 45 minutes.
That strikes me as
unbelievable, right? Crazy. Yeah. And here's the thing. I watched the movie and I was so inspired by this, because he was doing this in Paris or whatever for like buildings for a while. And he was only 25 years old when this happened. But he saw like a magazine or newspaper ad with the Twin Towers that were being built. They weren't even built yet. And he saw them, how tall they were going to be. They were like twice the size of the Eiffel Tower. And he said, right then he looked at it and he said, this is my dream, is to walk between those two towers. And he drew a line in between two of those in this newspaper ad, based on the movie description anyways. And he was so committed to this vision, this dream. He had this idea. It wasn't even built. He couldn't even physically do it at that point because it wasn't built. But he cultivated a team of people to be inspired by his dream. And for months and months and months, I guess years, he created a plan to go make it happen. And so many things had to happen for him to make it work. He could have easily died. He could have easily not made it up there. But he was able to dream and then created a game plan around the dream.
And what I like about it is, like, while I normally think of tightrope walking as sort of an athletic endeavor, it's really like he views it more as like a work of art. Like that was a piece of art for him. Yes. And so his vision was very artistic as opposed to kind of, there was a skill-oriented part because you have to know how to do that. But the ultimate vision is this would be like a work of art in total.
Yes. And the thing was even more inspiring us. He wanted to create this work of art that inspired other people to fulfill their dreams and to chase the dreams that they thought weren't possible.
Do you think that's true for many of the people you spoke to, is that their vision ultimately was not to just do what they wanted to do, which was great, but also to have it be a vehicle to inspire others, like either a work of art or a work of inspiration or something like that?
Absolutely. The first chapter I talk about is vision. The final chapter in the book, I talk about living a life of service. And all these great people that I interview, and I'm sure you interview as well, all these great people have an element of giving back. I mean, you, James, you're constantly giving back to your audience. You're doing so much where you're investing the money, not looking for a return on your investment, to give, because you have a gift of connecting with people and connecting ideas for people with your podcast, your books. You give away your books to people all the time,
right.
And I'm assuming that you would say that, it feels great to give and to give back and live a life of service.
Absolutely. I find also if you're not focused on the giving, so in all my endeavors, it's always, I have a value system, and it's message before money. So I always make sure, am I really being true to my message? And if that's not the case, I always find I'm never going to make the money. The money is a byproduct of the message or your value system or your inspiration or whatever.
Or when you focused on the money, like you did many times before, you went bankrupt.
I totally
ruined yourself. Your relationships were done. You had to ask your parents for money for diapers, like all these things I remember you saying.
Yeah.
And so you can make the money, but is that sustainable?
Yeah. So, and you have to be, but then it requires a certain maturity, because I didn't have that maturity when I was younger. It's not just message before money. It's message before, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you have to make sure. So how do you find what your message is?
Yeah. So the vision thing and figuring this out, because a lot of people say, well, I don't know what I want, or I want all these different things. I want to do it all, like your friend's daughter who's like going from thing to thing. I think the best way to explain this is there's different seasons of our life. And I look at everything in sports terms. In sports, if I was in the playoffs every week, all year round, I'd be brain dead playing football, because it'd be so hard and demanding. That's why there's a preseason, there's an off season, there's the regular season, then there's the playoffs. And then you have a break to reevaluate.
And then by, let's say, age of 29 or 30, your career as a football player is over, but then you go into sports,
a new season
casting,
of life.
a
new season. So there's constant reevaluation of what I want to create. Constant seasons of our life.
It reminds me too, take Roger Staubach, right? Who was one of the most famous quarterbacks ever for the Dallas Cowboys. It's I don't know anything about football. It's the only football player I know. Primarily because he took that excellence of being this Hall of Fame level quarterback, and he made $300 million in real estate after that.
Yeah.
You can transfer the techniques of excellence from one field to another once you know how to do it.
Some people don't know how to do it, though, or they get stuck in the past.
Right.
And they don't figure out how to translate it over.
So I think then the important thing to remember is, start off with create a vision.
Yes.
You can't just jump from one area to the next thinking you're an expert in the next. You have to go from one area of excellence and understand that first now you need vision if you're going to reinvent yourself.
And here's an exercise I talk about in the book, actually, in that first chapter, on how to have that vision. Because some people say, well, how do I come up with it? Or I don't know, because I've got all these different ideas. And what I say is to literally go into nature by yourself, no phone, no computer, take a piece of paper and a pen or a notepad, and lay there in nature, in silence, and dream about what one perfect day could look like for you. So if I could have anything in any day, what would that look like? Who would I be spending time with? What would I be working on? If you're at the beach all day, okay, then write that down.
What if they write too many things down? I think a lot of times people might write 20 things down, and you can't really be excellent simultaneously at 20 things.
Yeah, you can't be. I think it's maybe when you're 100, maybe you can become excellent over 20 things. But I think from one day, what would you want to do? So what would you be doing when you wake up? So I'll give you an example. I wake up at 7 a.m. with the sun shining on my face and listening to the waves crashing in the distance. And I wake up with a smile on my face because I can't believe that I'm laying next to the woman of my dreams and she's with me. So that would be my first moment of my vision of my perfect day. And then what would the next thing be? What would I be doing next? What would I be working on during my business hours later in the day? What would I be doing at nighttime? Would I be traveling or planning a trip? So kind of writing down and dreaming in nature what this could look like. So the first part of this exercise is just to write it down what one perfect day could look like and be very descriptive on all the things that you want to create, feel, touch, smell, who you're hanging out with, what you're working on, your workouts.
But then I would like take you as an example, and then I'd like to also have you talk about someone in the book. But you as an example, when you were in college, your perfect day included being a pro athlete.
That's it.
And you didn't. You are to some extent, but you didn't. That wasn't really. That didn't become your life purpose. It's a little different now.
Right.
And should you then broaden what you think is the specific perfect day and just broaden it slightly so you could have, it's almost like an umbrella over lots of ways you could slice it?
It depends on what season of life you're in. So if I was in college, I would write about wanting to be a professional athlete, training every day for that, what I'm working on to get it in my perfect day. And then there's a second part to this exercise. In sports, the best football teams that I played on, when I'd walk into the locker room before practice, the coaches would have an itinerary for us of everything we were doing for that day. So the water break times we would have, the offense, the defense, everything was scheduled of what we were creating that day in order to achieve our vision for that week of winning the game. So we knew everything we were going to do before we went out into the practice field. We didn't just show up and the coach would just say, okay, show up on the field whenever you want and we'll throw the ball around. It was very detailed and very clear. And so what I would say for the second part of this exercise, after you write down your vision for a perfect day, is to create an itinerary for this one day. From the moment you wake up, say it's 7 a.m., every 30-minute increments, what are you doing until the moment you go to bed to fit this vision, this dream you have into your actual day? Schedule it out. And maybe you're busy, you don't have all the time to do everything right now, you've got 3 jobs or whatever, and you're like, well, that doesn't work for me. Figure out the first hour of your day. How can you fit in the first hour of your perfect day and schedule that in? And then start working to adding more and more hours to this dream you have into your everyday.
That is so key. And it reminds me of the story of the woman who wrote the movie Pitch Perfect, which my kids, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. My kids love the movie. I actually love the movie.
Who's the main actress?
I forget her name, but
Hendricks or something. Is that her name?
I totally forget, but I like her though. She's good. But the writer,
it's a good movie actually.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. And the writer wrote it over a period of 3 years on her subway commute to work.
Wow.
So it's a matter of finding, like a lot of people say, I have no time. But it's a matter of kind of finding. There is always time.
Yes.
And so, let's even say you work an 8-hour workday. That means you sleep 8 hours, you work 8 hours, and then you have 8 hours to do something. And she was just, let's say she had a 15-minute subway ride. It took her 3 years, and now she made one of the most popular movies ever.
And that's Pitch Perfect. 2's coming out.
Yeah.
Things. Yeah.
So what about the people in the book? Who do you see as having like kind of a clear vision and they did it?
A lot of the people I've interviewed, Angel Martinez is a great example of this. He was, when he was a young kid, he had a vision of just buying a pair of shoes and then fell in love with shoes and the whole essence of shoes and what that represents for him, the freedom it gives him, the identity it gives him as having this pair of sneakers when he was a kid here in New York City, essentially just trying to make it.
It's so funny because you think, who grows up thinking, boy, I really want to sell a lot of shoes, but here as an example.
It's an example.
And it reminds me of Sam Walton, obviously of Walmart fame. One time he and his number 2 guy went into some, shopping store in a strip mall somewhere. And they got out and Sam Walton said to the other guy, well, what did you think? And the guy was like, seems a little dirty on the floor.
Right.
And Sam Walton was like, but did you see the perfumes rack? They had this. They were showing these perfumes in this way. They were holding them this way. It was like perfect. I took all these notes, and he had like page after page of notes. And then did you see like the clothes hanger rack? Where they had all the closet supplies. Like it was amazing. And so Sam Walton had this passion for how a store should be laid out, and then he created the biggest store ever. So except for Amazon now.
Right. Biggest retail store. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So, for me, vision is the first thing. Once you have the vision, then the next steps is figuring out how to make it come true. And that's kind of the rest of the book is like, okay, once the vision comes, there's going to be a lot of adversity along your way.
Well, I'm going to get to that in 1 second. Yes. And I like your nature strategy. I have a similar strategy, which is, but it doesn't involve nature because I'm not a nature person. Go into a bookstore before they die, and bookstores have all the interests are clearly labeled. So from the front entrance, you can see everything that you could possibly be interested in, and find a section where you're willing to read every single book in that section. So if there's some section that it really draws you and like you're literally willing to read every book in that section, then that's a potential vision for you.
I like that.
And if it's not true, then just, I don't know, to get a bunch of books and then come back to the bookstore tomorrow and see what you want to read. Like just keep doing it because you don't know.
You can also just ask yourself the question, what's the thing that makes me the happiest every single day that I'm working on? And start saying, okay, I enjoy being around kids. I enjoy being by the beach. I enjoy working out. Okay, there's a place to start from. You could also ask your friends, what's the thing I do the best? Where you see me at my happiest. Ask your friends.
That's a great point.
When am I the happiest? When am I the most fun and most joyful to be around?
Can you come up with and I know you have 12 more chapters here. We're going on this, but I really think this is really important. Mm-hmm. Can you come up with a vision or a purpose or passion or whatever if the relationships in your life are not functioning? Like if you're having a problem with family or friends or spouses or girlfriends or boyfriends or a problem with substance abuse or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can. I think it's powerful to have a great team around you supporting you and have great relationships around you. But listen, I didn't have all my relationships in order my whole life, with my family, my parents, friends. There was conflict, coaches, and I was still able to achieve great things.
So maybe this gets into your next section, which is turning adversity into advantage.
Yes.
So what are the different types of adversity that you saw among the people you spoke with?
I mean, so many. I mean, I think of a guy, Kyle Maynard, who was born without arms and legs.
That's adversity.
Right? It's like, okay, all of a sudden he can't walk, he can't grab anything. And he's lived an incredible life. He's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro on his elbows. It took him 12 days to crawl up the mountain, where people die who have legs climbing up this mountain.
So why did he do that?
I think he was inspired. I mean, he had a mission to serve the fallen heroes from the army to represent, to give back to them. They poured the ashes out for some people that died in the army at the top there, and he wanted to be an inspiration to other people who have excuses in their life.
So his vision was specifically to show how adversity, no matter what your adversity is, it could be turned into an advantage.
Of course, yeah, and you can inspire people with it. I like to say, I've talked about this on your podcast before, but I've experienced sexual abuse. My brother was in prison for a number of years. I've gone through injuries, parents divorced, things like that. Not as bad as a lot of people in the world, but I've gone through adversity, and I could have had it all hold me back and say I'm a victim and this is not fair and why me. But instead, I learned to use it as my story and use it as fuel. So
I see that a lot too, that people use these things as excuses, mm-hmm. and there's many layers. Like I don't have enough money to do this, or I don't live in Paris, so I can't be a painter.
I've got kids, I don't have time, or I'm stuck in this relationship, or I'm married and I can't get out of it.
So sometimes those are serious. Like, let's say if someone's in jail, they're probably not going to create a car company at the same time.
Of course not.
So in some cases, you have to turn adversity into an advantage. In some cases, you have to eliminate the adversity, like get out of jail, or get out of an abusive relationship, or whatever.
And like my brother, great example, he was in prison for 4.5 years for selling drugs to an undercover cop when he was 18 in college.
Oh my God!
And he was sentenced 6 to 25 years. And he could have stayed in that whole time if he would have had bad behavior, if he would have said, screw the system, this and that, and just messed up. But he got out on 4.5 years in good behavior. He went to school during prison. He did everything he could to transform his life to make up for it. And then when he got out of prison, he could have said, you know what, no one's going to hire an ex-convict because that doesn't happen. Instead, he created his own vision of wanting to be the best jazz violinist in the world. He knocked on every restaurant door in Columbus when he came back home. He was constantly on the go, hustling, using his story and saying, hey, this is what I did, but here's where I'm going. And this isn't me anymore, and this is what I want to provide to the world. And I have a great talent to offer through giving music. And his music, when I watch him live, it's like he puts his whole heart and soul from all the pain he had from those 4.5 years. It comes out in his music, and it creates something beautiful. Without that experience of adversity, he would not be the man he is today, the loving father and husband he is, and he would not be able to share this gift with the world the way he's doing it.
I like, two things you just said there. He said, here's what I did and here's where I'm going. Mm-hmm. And he could demonstrate that because he could show all the things he had achieved, while he was in jail. And then B, he was giving, he offered something of value.
Yes.
Like, so they would like a restaurant, for instance, would make more money if they had a good, I don't know, jazz violinist working there. So he was giving something that they couldn't say, no, we just can't hire you, because they would lose an opportunity.
Exactly.
So you have to kind of, it's like you said, he turned that adversity specifically into time to develop his skills and to focus, and then he knew how to communicate those skills in a way that could serve others.
Exactly.
So what's another example from the book?
For adversity, I mean, we talked about...
Probably everybody's got an example.
That's the thing. I've
never met anybody, like on my podcast, and I'm sure on your podcast,
who didn't face adversity.
Right.
Exactly.
It's stunning.
And that's
actually, because I don't know if you really need to have like a shitty life to be successful, but it seems like that's 99.99%.
Here's the thing: the bigger the dream, the bigger the goals we have, adversity is going to come our way no matter what. There's going to be more challenges for us to overcome, to embrace, to learn how to get over, to get that next step. And that's the thing. Like everyone I interviewed on my podcast could have gone in any chapter that I talk about, because these are all common principles that they've faced, overcome, that they've embraced. And that's the thing. Most people are like, well, it should come easy. But it's like, if you have a big dream, if you want to make millions, if you want to do all these things, there's going to be obstacles already. You don't have to create obstacles for yourself. I
mean, I think part of the thing about adversity, part of the thing about mistakes, which you don't learn in school. I mean, I try to tell this to my daughter. She calls me up and says, I got 100 in biology. And I said, well, that's really disappointing. And she's like, what are you talking about? It was 100. And I said, well, in the real world, you're good if maybe 50% of your decisions work out. Wow. And in school, that would be called an F. That would be failure. Right. But in the real world, that would be success. So it seems like something's wrong if the hundreds are coming too easy. I'm not bragging about her because I'm trying to change her behavior. And so I try, like when I teach her tennis, for instance, I try to make her make mistakes, because when you make mistakes, that's when you figure out how to, you start really thinking, how can I adjust so that I'm not making a mistake? If you just hit the 100, you don't think. And it's the repeated thinking, particularly when you're younger, that builds much faster connections between the synapses in the brain. I like that. And it's very important, actually, for skill learning to actually make lots of mistakes, because then you're doing it over and over and over again until you stop making mistakes.
Yeah. One of the chapters I talk about that could also relate to this is mastering your body. I tell people to experience pain every single day.
Okay, so how should I do that?
You should do some type of workout where it's really uncomfortable.
I used to have a trainer, and Claudia, my wife, can attest to this. I would get back after an hour and a half, and I was in so much pain and agony, and I was sweating, and I was gross. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy. I mean, not that you have to enjoy everything in life, but that wasn't good for me. Like, I ultimately stopped because it was so annoying for me.
If it's that annoying and it doesn't work for you, then you shouldn't do it. But I think you should experience some type of discomfort every single day to learn and to grow. I think the only way you're going to grow is if there's discomfort or if you're learning from mistakes, right?
Yeah.
That's the way we learn and connect new things and figure out how to, move through it.
Okay, so let me ask you.
So it could just be like 100 push-ups without stopping.
Yeah.
Or going to as many push-ups as you can without stopping.
How many push-ups can you do without stopping?
Maybe 45, maybe.
Okay, could you do 100? Would that be...
No, I couldn't right now.
Right.
But I could probably train myself to do it.
I bet you I could do 40.
Really?
Yeah.
Full push-ups, chest to the ground. And
Yeah.
We're going to do an experiment after this.
Okay, after the podcast.
Here's what you should do. Like every day I say, okay, I'm going to do as many push-ups as I can in the morning. And then when I'm at failure, I'm going to do 5 more. So when I'm at my last one where I can't even move, I'm going to do 5 more. Just that one 5-minute exercise is going to make you expand your mind and your body.
Well, somebody once asked Muhammad Ali, how many push-ups do you do a day? And he said, I don't know. I don't start counting until I'm in pain.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
So okay, let's say it's something a little more abstract, like I love writing, for instance. How can I experience more discomfort or pain each day in writing? And I try to do that, but it's hard conceptually to think about.
Sure. I mean,
I try to be more open, but there's only so many. There's only so much blood you can bleed before it seems almost narcissistic.
I think you could do exercises that will bring out things that you don't like doing, or that expand you in a different way. So maybe only writing in a haiku, or these different formats. I'm not sure these other formats of writing style, but only writing in a certain way as an exercise for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
or it could be.
I like that.
Or it could be okay. I'm going to call someone that I haven't talked to in a long time that I really don't want to talk to. And
That's a great one for me because I do not like doing that.
Exactly. So something
I'm going to start doing that.
That's painful. Like, hey, I just wanted to connect and say I've been an asshole and or whatever. Like I should have reached out and I really want to build our relationship stronger. Is there anything I can do to make that happen? Like that's uncomfortable for people.
Yeah, that is.
Or writing, it's like do something good that's uncomfortable, like writing a gratitude letter to someone that you've had a fight with, like telling them all the things you appreciate about them.
It would be all day and night for years for me.
Exactly.
Before I get done with that.
But I mean, there's different things we can do every day. It doesn't have to be physical pain, but I think the body, if we talk about mastering your body, it's important in my mind to have the energy to be able to create great things in the world, to have the focus, the clarity, to be able to make the decisions we have throughout our days. And if our energy, our health is not in control, is not under, in alignment to our vision, then it's going to be hard to make those decisions.
Well, then you get into how, and this is related to dealing with adversity, but you can call the next section cultivate a champion's mindset.
Yes.
So what? And I don't know if you've read Mindset by Carol Dweck, where she talks about
growth mindset.
Yeah. And so so talk about what is a champion's mindset? What can I do to get a champion's mindset?
Well, here's the thing.
And I'm an old man, so
right.
we
can all get it because we can all lose it very quickly.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. So I know you don't watch sports much, but at the end of
the first sports I watched in a really long time was last night, actually in a bar. I don't drink at all, but I did it because the final trailer of Star Wars was happening during this game.
No way.
Yeah,
Was it amazing?
It was amazing. and the bar was packed, not for the game, but for
Shut up,
all
really?
people like me who wanted to see the Star Wars trailer.
I still haven't seen it. I don't really watch Star Wars that much. That's cool. I'll have to check that out. So at the end of the World Series or the Super Bowl or big playoff games, there's usually an MVP of the game, someone who does something incredible, and so they go interview that person right away, like, how'd you do it, or how do you feel, or whatever the question they'll ask them. And there's usually two types of responses. And the first one is the Muhammad Ali approach, since you already mentioned him, the Muhammad Ali approach, which is
I'm the greatest.
I'm the greatest. I knew I was going to win. None of these fools could stop me. I train harder, blah, 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 all these different things. It's like their ego is so strong, right?
But he does that. That's almost strategic. So he has the ego, but he also wants to scare the next competitor off.
There's the Floyd Money Mayweather, who's the same way. Like, no one can ever beat me in the world. No one will ever beat me. I'm the greatest, right? It's like people have this confidence. The other approach is, first, I want to just say thanks to God and Jesus for giving me the strength. And without God, nothing is possible. And all of it goes to Him for the glory, that type of response.
So what's better?
So they're both right because they have an incredible belief in whatever it is that they're focusing on, whether it's themselves.
But the guy who says I'm the greatest, isn't he going to be more easily disappointed and afraid not to be? So he has the fixed mindset.
I think it's going to be harder over time with that person. But
like look at the length of Muhammad Ali's career versus George Foreman's career, for instance.
Exactly. No, I don't think it's good to have the ego fixated on yourself. But the point I'm making is, like, the belief is so unwavering either way. They have a belief that God is guiding them or giving them the strength, and they're putting the faith in God or the belief in themselves that they've done the work and they've been committed to this.
So in some sense, having faith that they've done the work is really important. It's
a sense of belief, like,
all you can do is preparation. So if you have faith that you did the right preparation and you know what that right preparation is, then the results are kind of out of your hands, but you have the right you're going into it with the right mindset.
But the difference between the very top and second place and third place or whatever, or those that don't make it, is like they don't believe in themselves enough. And so they haven't done the work, or they haven't seen the results over time to believe in themselves enough.
Where does talent play a role here? Like, at what percentage of that final leap towards greatness is talent the one that propels you?
You've got to have incredible talent to get to that position in the first place. But there's a lot of talented people who can't get there because their mindset isn't there and they don't believe in themselves enough.
And also, I would say it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be number one in the world to do great things in the world.
No.
So, for instance, I was having a conversation with someone. He was explaining to me the difference between the number 300 tennis player in the world and the number 1 tennis player in the world. So the number 300 tennis player in the world said, I can put a quarter on the back line and serve and hit that quarter. And the difference between me and the number 1 is the number 1 could put a dime on the back line.
Right.
And so it's a very tiny difference between 300 and 1.
I could probably hit like a beach ball maybe, and 1 out of like 50, right?
So, but still, that could be good.
Yeah.
Like that could be enough to beat like anybody you ever want to beat in tennis.
Right, exactly.
So, or if you're an entrepreneur, not everybody is the number 1 entrepreneur in the world.
And here's the difference probably between 300 and number 1 in tennis is maybe the number 300 could hit a quarter as well sometimes, but when the pressure is on in the right moments, could he hit that quarter or could he hit that dime consistently? And that's the difference between number 1 is he doesn't let his mindset or her mindset hold her back when the pressure hits because he's done the work and he believes so much in himself. He's able to remove those fears from his mind.
Right, and I also want to add, it's not so bad being number 300 in the world either.
Of course.
But
amazing.
even to get to number 300, he had to have like a champion's mindset along the way.
Yes, it's different levels of champion's mindset.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm wondering if maybe talent is that quarter versus dime difference. So,
but there's some people who could hit that dime or a half of a dime any time when the pressure isn't on. Maybe in practice they can hit it every time. But when pressure's on, they can't do it because they don't believe in themselves in those moments.
How do you deal with the pressure in those moments? How do you practice dealing with that?
It's literally practicing it, doing reps, doing test games, doing other playoff games. For me, it's very fine level. I mean, I had a sports psychologist when I was in that phase of my life. I was constantly doing visualization techniques. There's breathing strategies. It's hard. It just takes a lot of time and energy, like letting go.
It reminds me of a story about this guy named Mikhail Botvinnik was the world chess champion in the 1940s, and he would play practice games with his opponent smoking right into his face, so that he would get used to. And he hated smoking, so he would get used to the most uncomfortable playing environment possible, so he could learn how to focus.
Smart.
Yeah.
In football and college, what we would do in practice is we would have loudspeakers on the field with loud screaming like noise, as if it was like fans in the audience that we couldn't hear when we were calling the plays. So we had to learn like sign language essentially during football so we could know what we were doing, silent snap counts so you couldn't hear if someone was hiking the ball. So we would just enact, the most pressure-filled situations possible in practice.
So part of the trick here is not trick because it sounds intensely difficult, but this is related to causing some slight pain for yourself.
Yes.
So again, creating like almost like not just turning adversity into an advantage, but also preparing for some adversity.
Yes.
Like looking at your worst case scenarios, which sort of reminds me a little bit of actually marketing. So in marketing, you want to answer people's objections before they ask them so that it builds trust.
Exactly.
So, and it's the same thing almost in how you build faith in yourself, is that you're going to answer all of your potential objections about the skill you're developing.
Yeah, and I interviewed a guy named Jim Aframo, who's a sports psychologist, who's got a great book out called Think and Train Like a Champion.
I love that title.
Who's worked with all these champions, Olympians, and discovered like the science about how to do this. He was like, in practice, you want to get up and play like you're in the championship every practice. In the games, you want to come down with your energy level, actually, because you're usually too high, and you want to relax your body. Because most people are too tense in games as opposed to relaxed. They put too much emphasis on it. So he's like, come up and practice, come down during the real thing.
That's really interesting, to come down. I would not have expected that.
Yes.
You would think that in the game, you got to put in your all. But
this is another guy.
Like, what happens if you put in your all? It's not good for you,
Here's the thing.
or you can get disappointed.
I've got a great example for myself, but a guy, Nick Simmons, who's not a gold medalist, but an Olympic medalist, and I think 7-time U.S. champion in the 800-meter race in track and field. I just had him on, and he talked about, before the race, like the 24 hours before the World Championships, the Olympics. What he does is he does everything to get his mind off of the game, off of the race. He'll play video games, he'll watch movies, because our adrenaline is going to be pumping so much as it is. He says it's not for about 15 minutes before the race where I actually start to focus. Otherwise, he's going to lose all of his energy. I've done this many times before where, like, the night before, I'm like, let's go. I'm so amped up. I'm, like, running around. I'm, like, telling people. I'm, like, so pumped. And then in the game, I'm like, I can barely walk. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've just spent all my energy in the anticipation of this.
It's funny because I guess, like, I do something similar whenever I give a public talk.
Yeah.
I watch, for at least the 24 hours beforehand, all I do is watch stand-up comedy.
Nice.
So
That's
I'm not
smart.
thinking about my talk
I
at all.
gotta do that. But you can also get in that environment of, like,
Yeah.
wittiness, you know?
And also you see how, comedians, as opposed to the normal public speaker, they change their voices. They know how to walk around the stage. They know how to, like, play with the crowd a little bit. So these are all critical components of public speaking that most public speakers never think about.
Yeah.
But at least I'm just watching for entertainment, and then my subconscious is
That's
absorbing
smart.
this other stuff.
What's your favorite one to watch so I can next time?
Louis C.K. is, like, the number one, but also lately Amy Schumer is a genius.
She's good, huh?
And lately I've been watching Anthony Jeselnik, who's not as well known. And I like seeing Andy Samberg he doesn't do stand-up as much.
Oh, okay.
But I like his talk. He gives, like, speeches, like he'll open up the Emmys or whatever, and it's almost like him doing, he's hilarious. It's almost like him doing stand-up, and it's incredible.
I saw him I went to the Facebook conference like 4 years ago, and he came out as Zuckerberg.
I've seen that video.
It was hilarious.
That was great.
I was there, and I was like, this is unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, he did the Harvard commencement speech and
He
imitating
is,
Mark Zuckerberg, and that was hilarious. So that's what I do.
cool. Yeah. Very cool.
So let's see. The next section, I'm going to it. Develop hustle.
Yeah.
Which I see a lot in the entrepreneurial space, but what do you mean in general?
I mean, another great example I talk about my brother in the book is when I would go watch him perform at these, like, small little dive bar jazz clubs after he got out of prison for a number of years, trying to make a business for himself and make money. He would perform in front of, like, 15, 20 people. And then afterwards, he would go out and take his CDs and hand them to each person one by one and say, will you buy a copy? He's maybe only going to make $100 from, like, the door or whatever at the bar. But then afterwards, he can make additional money by selling the CDs. And most artists will just put them on a stand in the back and, like, say, leave $10 or $15. He would literally go out after in breaks and say, thank you for coming, will you buy a CD? He'd put it in their hands and say, will you buy it? And wait for them to respond. If they didn't buy it, he'd be like, okay, cool, and move on to the next. But he would stand there and say, will you buy it? And I think the shameless promotion of the way he did things for his passion, it wasn't like selling, like, a used car or something.
Right.
It was like, this is my dream. Will you buy into it?
It's so funny because I've had Luke from 2 Live Crew on the podcast, and Luke said something very similar, which is just that he had to hustle. Like, he had to get in front of every radio station.
Yes.
Like, here's this rap we just did. It's very Miami. Stop playing all the New York and California stuff. Let's go all Miami. And he would go and develop his Miami sound on all the radio stations.
Exactly. I mean, all the great minds that you've interviewed and people that they didn't just, like, go through life and things were just handed to them to get to where they wanted to be. They worked harder than anyone else. And then they started to get smart about how they did it as well to leverage it.
I think most people don't know the art of the hustle.
Yes.
So I think let's just say for the heck of it that it does take that 10,000 hours to achieve, like, greatness, or let's just say somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 hours. But somewhere along the way, you also have to learn what the correct ways to hustle are and what the incorrect ways. Like, if your brother was on an airplane, he wouldn't just hand his album to everybody on the airplane. He's handing it to the people who already just listened to him.
Exactly.
So,
and also you got to learn how to. It comes back to your health, which we'll talk about in a second. Is you can't just hustle for years and years and neglect your health and be like, well, I'm hustling and I'm not sleeping, and the result of it, that's not serving you, and you're not going to be energy to perform.
That's so true. Like, I never trust anyone who tells me they only need 3 hours of sleep a night. Like, you really need
6
8.
at least.
I was going to say 8.
Yeah,
but
I like 8 myself, but, like, 6 hours I feel like is the minimum.
Yeah.
To recover, if you're putting out that great of work and you're producing that much energy, your body needs to recover. Your mind needs to relax. Yeah, I need 8 personally, but 6 is minimum.
I need like 10 personally.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I try to do is, honestly, I try to do 8 and then 2 in the afternoon if I can.
Yeah. The hustle is, I would say the hustle is kind of like the key component for me and where I've got to where I'm at. Because I didn't feel
you
like
were totally hustling.
Because I didn't feel like I was smart. I didn't feel like I had any talent or skills after football, which I didn't. I didn't go to business school.
But you had the skill of learning what it was like to prepare for excellence.
I had that. but I was like a 23-year-old punk, and who would pay me money to do anything at that time? And now I've been able to build a fairly nice businesses.
And I would suggest people should go back and listen to the very first podcast you and I did, because you described in detail how you hustled to build. You totally hustled, probably more than just about any one of my podcast guests. Like doing all these LinkedIn meetups, and then transforming that into the webinars and so on. And so you kept building it to the next level.
That's it. I did like 20 events around the country in one year. I was sending messages one by one to people on LinkedIn to connect and get on the phone and interview people. I was doing the stuff that was tedious, like work, that most people don't enjoy doing, but I feel like that's what helped build the relationships that I have now.
Yeah, no, that's the develop hustle is really critical. And people think, okay, I'm just going to hit a golf ball 20,000 times, but you're still not going to get into any big tournaments. No. Like, you've got to now take it to the next level. Like, find the people in your industry, whether it's golf or buying good real estate for your store, or finding the right manufacturers to make your shoes, or figuring out the exact wires that are going to hold you between those two towers.
Exactly.
So
everything you need.
And so you talk about master your body, but I want to combine that with practice positive habits.
Yes.
So unrelated to the areas that you're achieving greatness in, what are positive habits that you would recommend people do?
I think, what is it? I think Brian Tracy or Jim Rohn or something like that said that. What do they say? Something like, successful people are simply those with successful habits. And it's very simple. These are habits that are challenging sometimes to get started, but once you have these in place, I'm talking about the first 2 hours of your day and then the things you do throughout the day. Once you have these in place, I feel like you're just setting yourself up to win in a much bigger way.
So, and this is where I think it's really important to not be bogged down by either negative relationships or negative emotional situations, or again, like some kind of substance abuse, or any kind of, like, not just substance abuse, but any kind of addiction. And then, what are some successful habits that are, let's say, starter habits to practice?
Here's a starter one that I believe everyone should be doing. It's something our moms taught us from an early age. What did your mom tell you every morning to do?
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. It's a great one.
Yeah.
What else?
Wash your hands, brush your teeth.
Yes, it's a great one too. These are simple things we should be doing.
I like how Elrod's got one. Take a glass of water, because he says it's like an inner bath.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
the Miracle Morning, right? I love that guy. Something that I started doing only a few years ago. I wish I was doing my whole life, but my mom always said, make my bed. And I never did it when I was a kid.
I never did it.
I never did. I was like, whatever. I just threw my stuff around. And I always come back, and it was like this messy, bed that I'd come back to. And as I started doing this a few years ago, do you remember the mastermind talks with the monk?
Yeah.
Talked about making your bed. I started doing it after that. And I'll tell you what, everything started changing for me throughout my day. Here's what I noticed. I started making my bed every single day, and I felt clear afterwards. I felt like I accomplished something. I was like, I'm building momentum in the first 5 minutes by making my bed and making it clean. When I came back into my room throughout the day, because I work from home, I didn't feel like I had a messy space. So I felt like everything was cleared and ready to go for me to sleep in again at night, as opposed to being sloppy.
That is a good one, because it has a feeling of discipline to it.
Discipline. And there's a reason why the Army, the Navy, all these people focus on making your bed. There's a reason for it. Is it starts you being disciplined first thing in the morning. It keeps you committed throughout the day.
I don't do that, mostly because I wake up earlier than Claudia, so
sure.
It's harder to do it. But I always try to write down 10 odd things to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. Like, it's too easy for me to say, okay, I'm grateful for my children and Claudia and
my health.
Yeah. So I try to think of, like, there's noise outside and it woke me up. So now I'm able to, I'm going to wake up a tiny bit earlier today to start my day.
Yeah,
so I'll be grateful for that, or whatever. It's so noisy because I live in such a great city. Mm-hmm. So I'm thankful to be here.
Yes.
So just quirky things, because it challenges the gratitude muscle.
Of course. So, gratitude is something that I talk about, where it's, on my voicemail, if you call me.
I remember this.
Yeah, the first thing I say is, tell me what you're most grateful for, and then I'll respond to you. Also, I create a list in the morning of what I'm most grateful for, so I'm glad to know you do that. And then also at night, the last person I talk to before I go to bed, I ask them what are the 3 things they're most grateful for. I think it's important to
That's a good idea.
pull it out of other people as well, because sometimes we forget.
I'm going to start trying
Claudia,
that.
you should say, what are 3 things you're most grateful for today?
Yeah.
And let her share, and then you share, these are my things I'm most grateful for.
You know what?
Finish the day like that. It's so powerful.
You know what I do, and I tell my kids to do, is at the very last thing of the day is ask yourself, who did I help today? So that means the next day, you're going to be asking yourself that question at the end of the day. So you're constantly figuring out like how to answer that question.
That's powerful.
So that's my everyone talks about the miracle morning, but like there's also a miracle evening you could do as well.
Exactly.
Like and as you said, like preparing yourself well for sleep, because sleep is so critical, and that includes digestion and eating habits before at night, because if you bog down on eating at midnight the second before you go to sleep, you're not going to really have a pleasant sleep.
Sure.
So
I think there's some other habits of like the wealthiest people in the world. They wake up earlier than most people. They read something every single day. They watch so many hours less of TV every week than most people. They're creating more. So these are like just basic habits. Like find something every day that you can create, whether that's a 5-minute poem that you're writing, or a video you want to put out there, or a podcast. I
think that is so important. I always recommend people write down 10 ideas a day, but you can fine tune that in lots of different ways. And
exactly.
I think even just 2 minutes of writing something down, like you said, like a 3-line poem, is powerful. Yesterday we were talking about comedians earlier. Yesterday I listened to an interview that this comedian Anthony Jeselnik did, and he used to be a writer for Jimmy Fallon, and he would have to write 70 jokes a day.
Wow!
So imagine doing that over years. He became an extremely good joke writer. Like, it's incredible. And then you see him in action, you could tell this is like a hard developed skill. So,
amazing. But
it just required him sitting down and just doing that every day.
Here's the thing. I was talking with Michael Port. Do you know Michael Port?
Yeah, speaker.
I was talking with him a few weeks ago, and he was talking about, all the haters in the world, the people that are critics of our work, things like that. These people aren't creators. Because when we're creating something every day, we don't have the time to criticize other people.
Right.
And to critique
That's a really
other
good
people.
point.
So focus on creating. You're not going to be criticizing other people or critiquing, because you're going to be so focused on what you want to create.
I have to be honest, though, like, all of these ways do sound like that sounds like a strategy for how do I deal with the hate comments, because there's always hate comments on everything you do.
Yes.
But still, it hurts my feelings.
Of course.
When I get, somebody, let's say there's 1,000 hate comments on something that you do that you're proud of. One of them is going to, by accident, figure out what button to push that your mother pushed when you were 2 years old.
They're going to leave a 1-star review and say this is the worst book ever.
Yeah. And it's hard, because why did they do that? Why did they take the time out of their lives to like ruin to put their hand in your wallet and take money out?
But think about it. Do you know any New York Times bestselling author, and do you have you ever left a 1-star review for another author?
Never.
Why?
Yeah, and I've never written a YouTube comment.
Okay, and why have you never left a negative or bad review for someone?
Because I don't want to hurt them.
Okay, you don't want to hurt them, but you're also like.
And by the way, I don't read books that I know are going to be 1-star by the end. Like, usually I can tell right away.
Right. But you're like, you can appreciate the work and the energy that goes into creating something based on the years that you've done it. And you understand, like, okay, maybe it doesn't work for me, but I'm not going to leave a negative review.
No, that's true. I mean, think about it. How long did it take you to write this book?
It took,
and you're like dyslexic, so how long did it take you?
It took a while. It took a lot of people helping me. It was a couple years process of writing a proposal and then writing the book. And
gosh, I remember it was like a year and a half ago we were talking about you were just shopping around for the book proposals and stuff. So
it's been a while. It's been a process of editing back and forth. Number of people reading it. My whole team helping me edit it, because I can't edit this thing.
Well, which segues into the next section, which I have found particularly lately, but all my life. So I've started a bunch of different businesses, and the key to success is building that winning team.
That's it.
And it's amazing.
We were just talking about this before.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like, now I'm thinking about angel investing and investing in general. The number one difference between the successful investments and the failed investments has nothing to do with product. Like, they could have the best product in the world. If the team is not like A+ quality, every single person, then it's a failed investment.
That's it. Yeah.
And it's hard to. You have to be a really good judge of people, and often that's a very difficult skill to develop.
Yeah. A good guy I interviewed in the book for this is Scooter Braun. And he is the guy who found Justin Bieber.
Sure. I know Adam Braun very well.
Yes.
Adam Braun's been on the podcast.
Yes, Adam's great. So Scooter, when I had him on to talk about this, building a winning team, he was like, I used to want to do everything on my own, and it was exhausting. It was exhausting, and I got results, but at what cost? And he's like, and I was never able to build it to the place I wanted to be on my own with all the artists he was managing, Justin Bieber and stuff like that. He said, when I brought on the team of all-stars, sometimes I didn't do it the way I wanted them to do it. Maybe I got frustrated because it wasn't my way, but it was still a great job, and sometimes it was even better than I could have done it. And I realized that I can never do anything truly great on my own. It always takes a great team around you.
It does, and I'll give two examples. One is when I was starting my first company, which was successful, I didn't realize this at first, but then I realized it. And that moment, it was like a light switch went on. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I can not just clone myself, but make better versions of myself.
Exactly.
So I was the programmer for my company, but then I got a guy. And people think you need money to build a team. You don't need money. So I got a guy who simply wanted to learn the style of internet programming we were doing. And so he was a great skilled programmer, but he had never done programming for the internet. So he just would do it as a challenge for himself. Yeah. He was on his own path to excellence. And I fortunately found him because, again, what goes around comes around. I had helped him in the past and so on. And so suddenly he was doing my work and he was part of my team. And then, again, I would hold contests for designers to find my designers, and the contest would be the projects we were getting paid for.
Right, exactly.
So it was. You can find clever ways to build your team.
Yes.
So because we're all working towards some vision, as you mentioned, and if you could kind of, money is again one form of payment, but there's other ways to help people, achieve their visions so they can help you.
Exactly. Yeah. And and people will say, well, there's individual athletes. They have teams. There might be the tennis player.
But he's got the coach.
He's got the coach. He's got the sports psychologist. He's got the manager, the trainer, the nutritionist. He's got his family who's on his team that has to be supportive. If they're not supportive, he's not going to make it. He's going to have that negative self-doubt.
Okay. So what if I'm going to pick the worst situation. Well, okay. What if you're in jail, like your brother? Yeah. How did he build his team while he was in jail?
It's a great example because luckily we were very supportive and we went every weekend to support him.
So he had family.
He had family.
Where did he get the violin training?
He did it with the family. My parents trained him since he was 4 years old.
Wow. And
he went to classes. He was doing it as a classical violinist. He was one of the top in the country as a teenager.
What if you grew up in a ghetto where everyone tells you, where your parents are nowhere and everyone tells you can't get out of the ghetto,
the challenge is you got to be aware of this. You got to have the self-awareness to be like, okay, my family isn't supporting me. So hopefully you're finding inspiration from somewhere where you can say, okay, there's a Boys and Girls Club I can go to, or from my teachers, I can have some connection with them after class where they can teach me more things, or I can ask questions from people that inspire me. Find someone that inspires you and ask them to mentor you if you don't have this from your family.
And I would go a step further and say, if you're in a jail or in the ghetto, you might not have the mentor physically in front of you, but read as many books as you can.
Of course. He was reading every single day. He was reading the dictionary. He was doing everything. And the things in prison, they have programs as well. Even though you're in prison, you can take college class. And so he went to the university there at prison, and he was taking advantage of every opportunity that came to him. There were other inmates who were still good people. They made mistakes, but they're good people that he surrounded himself with artists. He would send me artwork that other inmates would create for him to send to me. And he would write me letters. And I'm sure there's still inspiring people in prison, even though they've made mistakes.
One technique I find very effective on writing is I find a story that I love beyond belief, and I'll personally rewrite it because that makes me think of, for each line, what was the author thinking when he made that decision? Mm-hmm. Like when he said the sun had 15 minutes yet to live, as opposed to the sun was going down in 15 minutes. Did it add or subtract to the story? What was he thinking? So when you do things like that, or for your brother probably looking at, playing all sorts of classical violin pieces and stuff was probably good practice.
Of course, yeah.
So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
But that becomes a virtual way to mentor.
Yeah, of course. I mean, now you can build your team through books, through podcasts, through things like that. That's like your own mentor, like you said.
And also there's a lot of websites like Fiverr.com or Freelance.com where and Freelance.com, the CEO has been on my podcast, but there's all these websites where for $5 you can find people to help you, maybe, and it might not be the A team, but it could be the B plus team. Yeah,
exactly.
So, and then finally, your last section is live a life of service, which we talked about before. It's kind of coming full circle, but I do agree that money is and success. I shouldn't even have used money first there, but some sort of degree of contentment and success is just a byproduct of living a life of service, because that's the part that feels really good.
It's in some ways.
Look at Scooter Braun as an example. Like, the guy found talent and saved those kids' lives, so they became megastars.
Exactly.
And then they also entertain tens of millions of people.
Yeah, they serve a lot of people through music and through giving back in that way. I mean, Adam Braun's another example we talk about here. Here's the thing. It feels like it's almost selfish to give back, because it always feels the best for me. When I give to someone, or I'm giving back, or I'm building a school, it's the greatest gift I can give myself, is to see these kids and experience this gift of giving. So in some ways it's very selfish to give and be in service, because it feels so good. But this is what's the point if we're just doing it all for ourselves? We're just trying to make money for ourselves, and we're just trying to gain for our benefit without, we have a huge gift. The way I look at it is we were given this world. The world is here for us to experience. And it's our duty to give back to the world, as cheesy as that may sound. But it's we were born here. We're born in America. We're born wherever we were. We have resources available for us. We can't take it for granted. I feel like it's our mission to give back. And the way I talk about giving back as well, if you don't have money or the time and all these different things, you can give back and live in service every single day, just by walking down the street and smiling at someone, or by opening the door, or doing something nice.
I think that's a good point. And that's good practice.
It's a great practice. It should be the way we live every single moment. I'm constantly opening doors for people. I'm constantly saying, how are you? I'm constantly smiling when I walk down the street, as opposed to putting my head down. I just smile at people. And I love seeing a little smirk come from them at the last moment when we walk by. They just smile as well. And I'm like, you know what? If they had a smile on their face.
What if it was a little girl, though? Don't you feel a little creepy?
Well, I'm not doing that. I mean, you have to understand and have the awareness of every situation. But I might put my hand as a high five, or say something nice about her shoes or something. It's you've got to have the awareness of who you're around and things like that. But always to be a better person and to leave everyone better than when you found them. I think that's the way we should be.
Well, I think again about the guy Martinez, the shoe.
Kyle Martinez.
I think about that because again, you would think normally someone who starts a shoe company, he's basically in it to build up the shoe company and sell a lot of shoes and make a lot of money. But the way you describe him is as having this passion about shoes, and what our feet are so important because they travel us everywhere in the world, and being able to take care of them and enhance them in some way through footwear is actually a very critical vision and life of purpose.
Exactly.
But my gut would be to say he's in it for the money, but that wasn't it at all when you describe him.
Exactly. Yeah. And I look at someone like the guy from Tom's Shoes, who's okay, he's making money, but he's also every pair. There's another pair that goes to a kid who doesn't have shoes. And Scooter Braun said recently when I interviewed him, he said, everything I create now has a charitable component attached to it. Otherwise, I don't do it. If we don't attach a charitable component, if it's just for our financial benefit, it doesn't serve me and other people, and it's not what I want to do. And I find when you interview the richest people in the world, maybe this isn't true, but I find the wealthiest people I interview, when I ask them about it, how they made their wealth, they say the more and more I give back or donate money or give my money away, the more money I make.
Well, or their vision is such that again, the money is a byproduct. That they're performing some service for the world where the world enormously benefits. And then just as a natural consequence, because the world values this so much, money or value is created. So take Ev Williams, who created Blogger, Twitter, and Medium. And he grew up in a town of 369 people, and now suddenly he creates these networks that connect the entire world. And we kind of boiled down in the interview, he just wanted to make more friends. So he created a way for people all over the world could be friends with each other.
Amazing.
So
that's a lot of value.
Yeah, it's a lot of value. Because how many tens of millions of people use those services?
Sure.
So
amazing. Yeah, so living a life of service for me, it shouldn't just be about our benefit. It should be about serving our dreams and the benefit of all in that process.
And what's, and that's the last section of the book, but I want to ask, what's the process of reinvention? Because I'm sorry I keep referring to other podcasts, but so I interviewed Coolio, right, the rapper, and he did Gangster's Paradise in 1994, and that was sort of like his last huge hit. And then after that, he I don't want to say he didn't quite properly reinvent himself, because he has tried on a number of occasions, but he also had problems with substance abuse and things like that afterwards. I think it's kind of important to always reinvent, to go from greatness to greatness, because you're not going to do the same thing all your life. You have to kind of move from, in some cases you have to move from ambition to meaning. In some cases you have to find another area where you could, use your talents.
And some people, the great athletes sometimes don't know how to translate this. They live in the past. They focus on what they created as opposed to what they're going to create. But people like George Foreman found a way to turn this mean personality, killing people in the boxing ring, to be, how can I be the most lovable person in the world and sell hundreds of millions of dollars of George Foreman grills.
Yeah, I think he made like $300 million on the George Foreman grill. And much more than he's ever made on boxing.
He's able to reinvent himself. I look at Madonna as someone who could have been stuck in the 80s with Like a Virgin,
right,
and all these other songs, but every 3-4 years she comes out with a new twist, a new angle that's present with the times, and she's always relevant. It feels like, for 20-something years she's able to be relevant. So some people learn how to adjust and evolve into a new vision, and other people get stuck on the past vision they have. Some people could be stuck on winning that gold medal, and that's what they live off the rest of their life if they don't learn to translate those skills into a new vision.
I think that's really, really important. You can't just walk around the street wearing that gold medal.
That's it.
You got to be able to
creating.
You did everything it takes to know how to be the type of person to get that gold medal. Now you can use that body of knowledge that you've gained into any other area of life.
Go build a company. Go start a nonprofit. Go do something new. Be a broadcaster, whatever it may be.
Or a public speaker about these things.
Something where you can leverage it and continue to serve and give back.
Or you could write a book called The School of Greatness.
That's it.
By Lewis Howes, Howes, The School of Greatness. I'm getting it more now, the subtitle, A Real World Guide to Living Bigger, Loving Deeper, and Leaving a Legacy. And Lewis, thanks a lot. This is such an excellent book. I really recommend it to anybody listening, and I'm going to recommend it on my book list this month as well. So really, really appreciate you coming on to the show.
Thanks so much, James.
For more from James, check out the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network at stansberryradio.com and get yourself on the free Insiders list today.
I created this idea called Generation W. It's all about educating, inspiring, connecting women. And it's about building community at the same time. It's not like women are on some outpost somewhere, right? Just like no ethnic people are on some outpost there. People of color, right? We're all together. So if we learn how to appreciate each other, we elevate one and we elevate us all. And so for the first year, that's where we started. And we had 700 people show up. They had no idea what they were showing up to, but they loved it. And they said, we want more.